This episode is brought to you by Denver Urban Gardens. Denver Urban Gardens is the largest independent network of food-producing gardens in the country. The Denver Urban Gardens steward 200 community gardens and 24 food forests in the Denver metro. Making a gift to Denver Urban Gardens means supporting their mission to provide the skills, access, and resources for people to grow their own fresh and healthy food for themselves and their families. Your support makes Denver a healthier, greener city. You can donate now at dug.org/donate. That's dug.org/donate. This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. Ever wish you could get farm fresh produce, eggs, dairy, and meat delivered right to your door? Well, thanks to Pine Melon, it's easy to have the Colorado Farmers Market delivered. Get all your small batch local faves you can't find at the chain grocery store dropped right on your doorstep. Simply visit pinemelon.com or download the app and use our code CityCast to get 75% off your first time. That's pinemelon.com. And don't forget, use our code CityCast to get 75% off. Today on CityCast Denver, from legacy record stores like Wax Trax and Twist and Shout to a slew of new specialty vinyl shops popping up across the city, the record business in Denver is booming. In advance of Record Store Day this weekend, I sit down with Denver Post arts and entertainment reporter John Wenzel to talk about why Colorado loves vinyl so much and how to get the most out of this music lovers holiday. Today is Thursday, April 10th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. John Wenzel, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love being on.
So, John, this Saturday is Record Store Day. For the uninitiated, what is Record Store Day?
So Record Store Day started in 2008 as a way to pump up retail sales at brick and mortar record stores, which were just cratering. It was kind of a dark time.
And I was like 2008.
I know,
a lot
right?
Of good stuff going on.
Yeah, not a dark time for music, but for vinyl collectors, I was going to say. It was an online thing, it was a swap meet thing. And what's great is, it sort of prefigured the vinyl resurgence a little, and it's grown along with it. And they have exclusive titles you can only get at the record stores. And it's just a way to sort of pump up collectors and music fans and get people into retail.
Yeah, I have to say, I can get a little overwhelmed by this holiday because there's this urgency, right? There's special releases, limited run albums, stuff you can't get the rest of the year. It brings in big crowds. Like, I was looking at Wax Trax's website and they have a list of rules for like how to participate. What is your like basic advice for getting the most out of this day?
So I think you want to look at what they're offering. And this year, a lot of the stores in Colorado, and there are 33 stores in Colorado participating, are actually offering the full complement of items. That's 330 releases.
Whoa.
Going from Taylor Swift and Charli XCX, who drove a ton of vinyl sales last year, to Anderson .Paak, Bowie, Patsy Cline, Queen, Wu-Tang. And I've been told by several of these record store owners and managers that they're just ordering everything, knowing they'll sell the day of. So I would say, look at what's the one close to you and whether that's going to be a high traffic one. Twist and Shout, Wax Trax, Black and Red and Arvada, Angelo's and Aurora, those are going to be high traffic. So you probably want to get there early. Some people at Twist and Shout will go, really early the night before, do that kind of what people used to do for Sneak Grab, kind of camp out thing. So just be strategic, look at what you want, know that the most popular titles are going to have the most competition. But I believe, I could be wrong here, but there's more record stores than ever participating. We are at a historic high of record stores in Colorado, so I think there's more to go around as well.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's really another thing I want to talk to you about because you really follow, this is one of your beats, is the state of the record store here in Colorado. So, what is the state of the record store business in 2025? I know, like you said, there's 33, which is crazy, but where are we with record stores in 2025?
Colorado is bucking the national trend. And the reason Colorado is bucking the national trend is because we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are intelligently tapping the music scene here, which is generally great, concert buying, the bands. And so the US overall, I wanted to put this out there, it's really interesting, had 2,031 record stores as of last year. That's a decline of 3.7% from 2019. But despite that, Denver has opened several in recent years. I recently did a story, there's the biggest and oldest, Wax Trax, Black and Red, stuff like that. But you've got places in Minturn, Pueblo, Frisco, Greeley, Grand Junction that are all participating in Record Store Day. Some of those places people may have seen or heard of, Drop to Pop, Invincible Vinyl, City Records. These are all newer stores. So Denver is bucking the national trend. And I think it's because we have a lot of mom and pop stores here. These are not Sam Goody, Virgin, Tower Records, not that those exist anymore. But, these are not the Blockbuster videos of music retail. These are privately owned, in some cases, family businesses.
It's funny you say Blockbuster because I think about that because I had my neighborhood video store, Video Movie Madness. I've talked so fondly about it. And then when Blockbuster came in, it obliterated the Video Movie Madnesses of the world. I've told this story before, but like Video One on Colfax, if you brought your Blockbuster card in and cut it up in front of them, they'd give you like a free rental. Mm-hmm. But what happened eventually was most of those went out of business, and then Blockbuster did. Record stores, it seems to be, are like almost reversing their own demise into a new era of it. And like you said, these small, very boutique. I've been to 2 record stores in Frisco. They're tiny, but right. What does that say about Denver's particular market for vinyl?
I think it says, generally the record resurgence in retail and online is still going. You've got upscale clubs like Vinyl Me Please in Denver, although they've had a lot of troubles lately. And other bands and labels have gotten into it. But because people want records, and that's a physical, tangible experience, they don't mind going into a store to get them. In fact, a lot of people like them. It doesn't cater to one demo. I mean, you've got everybody in these record stores, older people, younger people, all backgrounds, colors, creeds. It's fascinating. So I think the diversification of albums coming out on vinyl, especially pop records, big pop records, Chappell Roan, like I said, Charli XCX Swift, is part of the reason. And part of the reason is it just goes hand in hand with being a music fan. And like I said, in Denver, we've got one of the best live music markets. We have an incredible scene. And a lot of these stores connect those dots, Wax Trax, Twist and Shout, especially Wax Trax, which has opened a couple new locations recently. They can connect the dots between the 90s and 2000s, Denver music scene with the Denver music scene of today. And not many people can do that anymore. We don't have Tom Murphy writing for Westword anymore. We don't have a music critic at the Denver Post. So that's an incredible resource.
I'm also thinking about you. So I think, I don't remember which record store, maybe it was Drop to Pop, is run by a guy that was in bands here in Denver in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, he's a great example. So they're not participating in Record Store Day, and there are Colorado record stores that are not. There are 33 participating here, but there's more record stores than that.
Oh.
However, Greg Daniels, who you're talking about, he was in Glass Hits and Vox, and he's putting out old albums on limited cassette runs. So it's kind of like, it's not apples to apples, but it's an analog of Record Store Day, no pun intended. He's going after collectors and scenesters and people who want a direct physical connection to music, whether it's new or old. And he sort of, specializes in a little more like, 90s through 2010s, alt rock, pop, goth, stuff like that. You won't see a lot of Taylor Swift there, but, it's one record store in a lot of record stores, and they're all sort of, it's additive, it doesn't feel like a zero-sum game.
So you wrote about Mutiny Information Cafe moving to Inglewood. They're one of those stores that sells records. And I'm just thinking about smaller stores like them balancing issues like steep rent with running like a boutique business. Are record stores selling things other than vinyl?
Yeah, and that's a business model that record stores pioneered in some ways to keep retail alive. Twist and Shout is a good example, and it's helped keep them afloat. Now, you bring up a good point. There's a reason why there's not a lot of record stores or any really dedicated ones in Baker or on Larimer in Rhino. These are high rent areas. And like the reason Drop to Pop can exist downtown, they're kind of downtown's only record store, is because it's dude's got a deal with the place next to him. And you know what I mean? It's like, it is difficult.
You got to know a guy.
You got to know a guy. And there's a reason Mutiny moved. The rent's just too high.
Yeah. This is also giving me an idea that like, we're all like, how do we reinvigorate the 16th Street Mall? Dude, let's open a giant record store.
Right. Well, you've got to wonder if this is becoming more and more, records, ironically, after record stores injected a lot of retail and merch and stuff. Now those stores are getting more records. You can buy records at Target. You've long been able to buy records at Urban Outfitters. But now it's like every boutique maybe has a half dozen records or more. It's not just a, vintage dumpster diving thing, crate diving experience.
No, and I'm glad you brought up the Target thing because I was wondering what that impact is on the record store of today, because I was at Target a couple weeks ago and I was like, oh, Nirvana's Nevermind. Like, my son loves this record. I'm just here. I could buy it. And then I was like, $30. I should just go to Twist and Shout anyway, but like that price point seems crazy to me. But I assume Target has to be selling some records to be, to have them on display. What is the impact of a Target to a smaller place? Or are they even in the same sphere?
Well, they are in the sense, they're head to head selling records. And Target has learned from independent stores and, small stores to cut deals with record labels and artists, and they have stuff there you can't buy anywhere else. So it's a mini record store day model in some ways. But that is unfortunately not a big price. A brand new, LP, especially if it's, nice gatefold, 180 gram, stuff like that.
Like a high quality, like you're saying, like a high quality. There is, very varying degrees of vinyl.
Yes, exactly. Because there's all these bells and whistles they tout to collectors. It's lathe cut. It's, this and that.
It's this color vinyl. It's got a limited edition insert with these photographs or whatever.
Exactly. Because, after all, these are collector's items. But you'll find that price across anywhere. A brand new record is $30, whether it's Wax Trax or Target. Now, if you're going to spend that $30, I would do it at Wax Trax or Twist and Shout or Angelo's or Black and Red. I would not do it at Target.
Because I know, I have to say, I was not like, oh, I'm dying to buy it here, but I just saw it and was like, oh.
Yeah, because that is a bit of a zero-sum game. If you get Nevermind, you've never had, Nirvana's Nevermind or In Utero or something like that, and you want to get it, you're going to buy it there and not somewhere else. But you're also not going to find, if you're interested in 90s, indie rock or grunge, you're not going to find Liz Phair or PJ Harvey at Target.
Right.
So better selection, more knowledgeable people, and just a better vibe, I think, at independent record stores.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon. Pine Melon is a unique local grocery delivery service. Think of it as the Colorado Farmers Market delivered. Besides just supporting local farmers and businesses, Pine Melon is also helping the environment. Each of their delivery vans keeps 50 cars off the street, and their returnable and reusable delivery boxes save 5,000 grocery bags every single week. This spring, Pine Melon is asking Denverites to make a pledge to support local food just once a month, and they're going to make it super easy for you. First-time customers get 75% off your first order. Just use the code CityCast. When you choose food that's grown, raised, and crafted right here in Colorado, you're choosing to protect the environment, improve your health, and help your community thrive. Whether you're getting some fresh produce delivered or the ingredients to make your favorite cookie recipe, it's cool to know you're making a difference. Visit pinemelon.com or download the app and use our coupon code CityCast to get started with 75% off. That's pinemelon.com and use the code CityCast to get 75% off. This episode is sponsored by Visit Port Aransas. Just off the Texas coast sits a unique beach town marked with salty vibes and sun-soaked memories. Port Aransas is a place where family traditions unfold naturally, and beauty lies both in island views and the unhurried moments between adventures. It's a place where multiple generations can get together under one roof to share slow beachfront mornings and cool Gulf breeze evenings. An island escape with 18 miles of shoreline to cast your line, kayak with the kids, or simply cruise the coast in a golf cart. My ideal vacation is sitting on a beach, reading a magazine. A long form. I love long form journalism under the sun. One visit and you'll see why so many have anchored their traditions to the island life. Trade mountain peaks for 18 miles of uninterrupted shoreline with an easy flight to Port Aransas, Texas. Go to visitportaransas.com and plan your visit. That's visitportaransas.com. You know, let's talk about the vibe, because I have to say, growing up as a teenage girl who was a voracious consumer of music, I will be honest and say I avoided some of the smaller shops I now champion because and opted for maybe like a Tower Records or a Sam Goody or a Best Buy because I felt less intimidated. And I wonder, you know, because there's these stereotypes about the cranky record store clerk who's like there to actually you when you're just like trying to ask someone about an album. And I wonder, you go to a lot of record stores. Do you feel like that environment has changed, or even like the types of employees, like the landscape of the interior of a record store? Is it different than maybe it was in the 90s?
It's not that much different in practice. You know, people are still, you know, crate diving and selling and buying and swapping and, you know, trying to get stuff. But I think the employees have gotten more diverse. There's a lot more women than I noticed in the 90s. I used to go to record stores in Dayton. There was a few called, like a mini chain called Dingleberries, which had a funny name, but they had amazing stuff, illegal bootlegs, you know, it was kind of a head shop. And Gem City Records, which is what got me into my favorite bands, Guided by Voices, The Breeders, Brainiac, all Dayton bands. And I think it did take me getting a little older and more adventurous to go to some of these places. Because, you know, if I was just going to get like a Guns N' Roses or Two Live Crew single, I would go up to Tower, which was near my house. But I was also in like middle school. So, you know, what did I know? But yeah, I do think they're more welcoming places. The layouts changed a little. Certainly the importance of certain aspects of retail have gotten different, the formats. But generally, they're better and friendlier than they used to be. And the old charms remain, I think.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like, you know, I imagine a young me now walking in to buy an Olivia Rodrigo album, but someone there telling me like, oh, if you love Olivia Rodrigo, you're going to love this whole record. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that, and I have to say, I have felt the vibe shift. I just wonder, with record stores growing again, it sounds like maybe the staff is more reflective of a wider audience.
I think it is. And that's just a good thing in general, you know, despite the social and political backwardsness in which we're going in a lot of ways right now.
Right.
Federally, you know, music is a lot more diverse than it used to be. There's a lot fewer genre boundaries. And you've got a lot of young people being inspired by indie rock, all-female indie rock bands, female-fronted indie rock bands. That was not the case in the 90s and 2000s. That was a white dude orgy. And now, you know, if someone likes, you know, like you said, Olivia Rodrigo, or even something a little more, you know, quote unquote, critically acclaimed. Well, she's critically acclaimed too, but you know,
it's like, she's awesome.
A little more like indie rocky, like Boy Genius or Wet Leg or something. You go buy that, they're going to tell you, yeah, absolutely, they're going to tell you what else there is like that, and they're not going to criticize you for buying that, because that's their bread and butter now is Olivia Rodrigo. And
well, I mean, like, she brought the Breeders on tour. Like,
yeah. Oh, totally.
She's aware, but it's cool to see it on the, you know, on the everyday where someone is interacting with someone. Yeah, it's just like, I just was thinking about that. But let's talk about, you mentioned this a little bit, but the actual record consumer. I imagine as vinyl sales grow, is the profile of the buyer changing? Like, are we seeing a more diverse array of types of customers?
We are. It used to be mostly male. It used to be mostly middle-aged to older, and that coveted, you know, 18 to 30, 18 to 34 demographic that advertisers and, you know, programmers always talk about is where the growth has been. Now, these are, you know, generally a little more upscale, you know, purchases. So it's less working class. It's more like middle to upper middle class. It's people who can afford it. You know, unfortunately, there is a bit of a barrier to entry. If you want to be one of those people who's like, look at my turntable, look at my, you know, beautiful records. But it is more diverse. And I think you can see that in the demand. You know, we have Victrola, the historic turntable maker based here in Denver, and their sales have gone way up. since they started offering cheaper, more accessible models. You've got Paramount Pressing, which was initially thought to be connected to Vinyl Me Please, but they're an independent pressing plant now. They're across from Mission Ballroom. They are just churning out stuff. And I'm excited to go take a tour there next week with one of their experts. And that demand, I think, indicates, and the types of things they're printing just indicates more of a market, more Madonna records, more for everybody, not just what you would consider maybe to be a Madonna target market, more Charlie XCX. Like, there is no saturation level that we've hit point where you cannot sell a vinyl version of Brat or Brat, but with, 400 other songs.
I know, now I'm going to have to go buy Brat on vinyl. I can't believe I don't have it. I listened to it all summer on Spotify. It's time.
I know. Well, there's something satisfying. I mean, I get every new Guided by Voices record on vinyl. And why? Why do I do that? Because I also have the CD I listen to in my car, which sounds hilarious, but it's true. I listen to it on Spotify or whatever, but it's like, it just breeds a sense of completism. And, if you're already a little bit of a collector, it just kind of puts it into high gear.
So you brought up the Victrola, the actual record player company's role here in Denver. And we actually talked about this with you. And I wanted to talk a little bit before we go about the business aspect, because you mentioned Vinyl Me Please. And they're this company that reissues classic albums on vinyl and runs like a record club. But they built a record pressing plant here. And then the company basically fell apart. Everyone was suing each other. What's the state of Vinyl Me Please?
So at the moment, things are not looking great from the outside. They do not really respond to the media, I think probably because these lawsuits have not been settled yet that I'm aware of. I've reached out to the lawyers for both parties. They're suing their former executives. I believe there's a gender discrimination suit in there. But yeah, I mean, I think they're a victim in some ways of vinyl's success. Like I said, labels, other big corporate retailers, online stores have all gotten into the field that they helped, really codify with high-end reissues and now newer stuff. And finding that people, seeing what the market would bear, finding that people are willing to pay $60 for a record per month, at least. And as, a lot of other people just stole their business. Now, they've also in recent weeks laid off some of their head honchos, their longtime designer, their longtime writer. They've changed their business model. They're no longer shipping overseas, as far as I know. And there's just been a lot of business troubles, people constantly trying to spoof their site and make it look, there's these really elaborate, detailed fake Vinyl Me Please sites that really make me wonder who is creating these and whether it's some disgruntled former employee or whatever. I mean, that's all speculation. But no, they're not doing great. And they had touted this record plant in Rhino as, the next phase of their evolution. And, the board there was like, we don't know what they're talking about. So
yeah, that was very revealing.
So, it seemed like there might be this big, huggy One Love renaissance there where Victrola and Vinyl Me Please and AEG and all these other entities were going to be working together. And I think they are still in some way, but Vinyl Me Please appears to be in trouble.
Before we go, do you have a favorite record store in Denver?
I do, and it's a little generic, but it's Twist and Shout. It used to be Wax Trax. I lived on Cap Hill for 10 years. I lived across the street at the Fountainhead from Wax Trax, and I would dumpster dive back in the early 2000s and get, cutouts and stuff like that. And then I actually would buy records from them. And, they were just a utopia. But at the time they had 3 locations and then those went away and now they're back. So I like going there, but Twist and Shout, it's hard to beat for selection. They pay pretty well if you're looking to sell records. And they'll order anything for you, like most of these stores will. But I think Twist and Shout just has the scale that I'm looking for at this point in my life.
And I will just say, back to the conversation I was having about the intimidation factor, Twist and Shout has felt always so welcoming since I finally went in there, as like a young person and realized like, oh, a little bit that was me. But that's the store I like we take our son there. Like in any, you can ask any of the clerks any question and they don't look at you like you're stupid. They're like, hey, let's go check and see. We might have this. If not, I can order it. But I agree with you. I feel like they're kind of like the good all-purpose accessible record store.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like I said, the culture, or as you brought up, the culture of record stores has changed for the better. It's gotten more diverse, friendlier, more all ages. And that's what we need. That's especially what the vinyl industry needs if they want to keep this renaissance going.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We want to hear from you, too. What is your favorite record store in the metro area? Text or leave us a voicemail and you may hear it on the show. That number is 720-500-5418. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Olivia Rodrigo about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya. Tag. We want to hear from you too. What is your favorite record store in the metro area? Text or leave us a voicemail and you may hear it on the show.